I was the first one to be, along with my conservative colleagues, fighting for pipelines. Pipelines now everyone claims that they support after opposing them for the last 10 years. So if Mr. Carney is so smart on economics, how is it that he was so wrong for so long on all of the economic issues?
I hear a new slogan brewing.
One thing I don't have experience with is taking jobs out of Canada, moving them to the United States, selling out our resource workers to support Middle Eastern resource workers. That's not the kind of experience that I have, but that's not the kind of experience that we want.
Caucus members and your candidates about wearing MAGA merchandise or using MAGA slogans.
Well,
this is what I mean. Even the media, like it's a good story to try and say he's MAGA, he's this, and it's like he's for the whole last 2 years. I don't think once has endorsed Donald Trump. Like I feel like he endorsed Chrystia Freeland saying "Make Canada Great Again," and he was laughing and saying, "Yeah, I would like Canada to be great, wouldn't you?" And that was the whole joke, right? Is that like it's like one of those, you know, we all understood Chrystia Freeland's meaning behind it, but when you just take the words without the extra meaning, it sounds ridiculous to say, why wouldn't you want that, right? Like that's the idea. And it's just funny because they've tried so hard to paint him with the MAGA brush, and I just feel like that's so unjustified. I don't know. I just feel like it's like maybe to people who aren't paying attention, but like other than that, it's not going to work, I think, on most people.
The instruction is that we should put Canada first. We want to put our country first, stand up for our country against both American aggression, but also against the destructive liberal policies that have made us helpless and reliant on the U.S.
Do you still think we're going to have a carbon tax election, considering Mark Carney says he's going to scrap the consumer one?
We are going to have a carbon tax election because Mark Carney has proposed to add another industrial carbon tax on top of the existing one. In days, Donald Trump could impose tariffs on Canadian steel. At the same time as Mark Carney says that he wants a new carbon tax on Canadian steel. By the way, it's not me that says his tax would apply to steel. It's him. In an interview he gave to CTV in Atlanta, Canada, a month ago, he claimed that taxing steel was a great idea because people, he says, don't use steel anymore. Well, this building would come crashing down without steel. Automobiles would be impossible to make without steel. Our civilization is, the bones of our civilization is steel. And Mark Carney wants to bring in a big industrial carbon tax on our steel workers at exactly the same time.
So since he brought it up, I want to play that clip.
So there's a couple things. One, what we're going to do, we're going to look.
So this is the clip Paulie I've just mentioned from about a month ago.
At all of those. We're going to make sure those incentives are big enough and broad enough and clear enough to Canadians. Then secondly, what we're going to do is make sure not that the government pays, not that we as taxpayers pay, but the large polluters pay. And so what happens?
But does that not ultimately trickle down?
No, because what the big companies are producing, by and large, are not products that we are consuming. There's some element of that, but by and large, you know, a steel company, how much steel are you using these days, Todd? I mean, not as much we used to. So anyway, so that's core to it. And then what happens is that those companies, they end up having a choice. Are they going to reduce emissions in their, say, factory, in that case of the steel company, or are they going to pay, via the government, are they going to pay Canadians to reduce those? It makes the system much more effective. It'll move it forward. We'll reduce emissions by more. We'll get more money in the pockets of hardworking Canadians.
Okay, so that was what the clip he was talking about. They don't talk about steel again throughout this whole interview. So he basically talks about taxing the big polluters, big producers. And I think Mark Carney's point was the average day person doesn't use steel, but he didn't specify that, right? And I think that's where, yeah, Pierre is definitely already capitalizing on it in this press conference here.
As Trump plans to tariff our steel. The combination of Trump's tariffs and carbon tax, Carney's tax, would destroy our steel sector and threaten our national security.
We're in this situation now where I'm like, we might actually have this election coming, but I'm not as excited. Like, I'm excited, but I'm like, this isn't, I don't know how this is going to go. I feel like this is anyone's game at this point. It went from like, you know, Pierre having like a 30-point lead to like now Carney's creeping up on him with like, you know, like arguably almost tied the game. So it's hard to see where this is going to go now. And yeah, I'm guess it's just grab your popcorn, folks, and sit back. That's all it is.
Mr. Thibault, do you expect Carney to get rid of the consumer carbon tax before he calls an election?
Well, he said yesterday that he wanted to get rid of it. We're looking into how that could be done. And
he was just asked if Carney's going to get rid of the consumer carbon tax before the election. So sounds like the election's coming, guys.
How rapidly it can be done.
Do you expect this to happen, though, before the election is called?
As I said, we're looking into it. I don't have like a time to give you. We're looking into different options. Do we need to change legislation? Can we go the regulatory route? Like, what are the options? And I don't have an answer for you yet.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Yeah, I agree. Like, Mark Carney's impressive resume as a banker doesn't stand, banking isn't politics, right? Like, it's different, right? I think, yeah, maybe you could be a good, like, finance minister, maybe, or minister of finance, but like, or, I don't know. That's how I see it. With a lot of my biggest problem with Carney is not Carney himself, but the party. I think calling Mark Carney a Marxist is a little bit of an overstatement. I think it just damages the credibility of the argument. I think it's I just don't see it. I see him as just somebody who's not far off the inner Ottawa circle, who's, talks about having dinner with the Pope in his book and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of how I figured out. That vote breakdown was wild. He should definitely go to that video and check that out. I don't know what vote breakdown you're talking about, but when I looked at when I was talking about voting, everyone's saying that 2/3 of the votes were disqualified. Well, that's not even true. Because, like, from what I was finding anyways, unless someone has an article to back that up besides Rebel News' video. Okay, yeah, that's fair, Hurricane, if that's your opinion after reading his whole book. I respect you for reading his whole book, and if you think he's a Marxist, then that's your opinion. I highly doubt most people calling him a Marxist have read his whole book. And I think that's kind of what I was saying there. But if that's how you still feel about it, then that's fair. Yeah, all I've seen so far is the Rebel News video, and from what the official claim is from what I was finding from the article, I think I posted it from City News in the Discord, is that 2/3 of registered Liberal voters just didn't vote. I did not see 2/3 were disqualified. That I have not been able to find anything of. I feel like that would be I think the other candidates would be pissed. Like, how would you disqualify that many votes? Like, it wouldn't, like, you know what I mean? Like 250,000 votes being disqualified out of 400,000. That seems unrealistic to me. That's more than half the votes. That doesn't make any sense. So to me, I'd have to see more evidence. I'm not saying that it didn't happen. I'm saying I'd have to see more evidence on that claim specifically, besides the Rebel News video that I already watched this morning. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Is he said himself he prioritizes the climate above all else, humanity above money. He said things like this that I find, like, yeah, they sound good in pretense, but put into practice, from what I've seen of the past, I just I'm not really for that rhetoric. That's kind of how it is. It's not that I'm against the concept. I'm just against how previous leaders have handled and said stuff like that and taken that as their mission. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I have a problem with. He does a breakdown on each riding. Freeland got 188 votes in her own riding. Yeah, I saw that, but I'm just curious, though, is it just because everybody thought Mark Carney was going to win anyways? And also, apparently, a lot of people are rallying behind Mark Carney because they didn't want to split the vote. Like, I have a friend who is NDP, and he essentially said that he's part of he's part of a few unions and stuff. And that's mainly why he's NDP, because if you are very focused on union rights, NDP usually is going to speak the most to you. To me, though, it's like they can say whatever they want, but it's the track records I have a problem with these parties, right? That's where I can't just sign on to those parties at all. And when it comes down to it, with what he was saying is that there's this all these unions are like, all, like, it's not like they're having some meeting, but just like, the water cooler coffee talk is, yeah, we're all going to vote Mark Carney because we think he has the best chance of defeating Per Poilievre. It's not about, and I realize this is where Mark Carney's rhetoric's coming in, because it's not about, being a good leader. It's about beating Trump and beating Poilievre, right? That's what it's about. And that's where I think they're winning some of these votes over. Why would 400,000 register by January 30th? Well, because they put in a bunch of rules afterwards. Not to mention, there was a lot of people who were being called out. A lot of conservatives were saying they were going to go sign up and vote for somebody else. And then that person also did get disqualified. One person got disqualified. Let's talk about that too. We can talk about that. That's a fair argument. If you want to talk about that many people registering and that many people not participating after certain candidates were disqualified, sure. However, when it comes down to the fact that 2/3 of those votes actually disqualified by some official, where they actual votes received, that's where I'm saying the misinformation's coming in, because that's not true from what I could find. You know what I mean? Like, That's what I'm trying to, you're allowed to vote a day after they said 250,000 were disqualified. But that's what I'm saying, right? Is that they put in new rules. They made it so you had to be a full citizen. They put all these extra rules in. And I think what it showed is how, what this more of the stance and the structure and what the Liberal Party's made of, more than it did actually say 230. You know, what it shows is their lax rules of allowing 14-year-olds and up in the party. That's also a rule. So, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if those are counted for I don't know if the youth of the Liberal Party is accounted for in the 400,000. But from what I understand, previously for Liberal leadership elections, you didn't even have to be a Canadian citizen. You just needed a Canadian address. So if you were a foreign student, if you were here on travel, I believe there was a bunch of loopholes you could get to voting within the Liberal Party. And I think they squashed all those for this election, right? So we have to remember that. That unless I'm right, and unless I'm wrong, you know what I mean? Like, fine, show me otherwise. Send me some links. Give me something to go off of besides a Rebel News video, please. So Mark Carney wins Liberal leadership election. 1 second. Make sure I'm all good here. Okay. So here's what I'm finding here. So basically, we got Mark Carney wins Liberal leadership by a landslide with 86% of votes. This is the National Post article. I was reading this morning about it. Ottawa, Mark Carney won the Liberal leadership race by a landslide, garnering 86% of the ballots on the first round of votes, and is said to take the stage as Prime Minister at a time when the country finds itself embroiled in a trade war, yada, yada, yada. Former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland ended in second place with 8% of the votes, while former House Leader Cool finished in third place. Leading up to the vote, Carney was never held elected office. Okay. Yeah, we know all that part. Where's the part of talking about the disqualified votes or the voters that didn't vote? So yeah, okay, it's not mentioning in this article. So basically, Liberal votes disqualified. Yeah, I'd like I said, like we'll look into this because like I'm curious about it too. Like, see, top results Rebel News at the moment. So this is the AI thing I use all the time. I talk about, so it gives me some sources here to go off of. So what we'll do is, it's not really the same thing. Liberal votes disqualified. 2025 Liberal presidential election. Several candidates and voters face disqualification issues. Okay, that's not what we're looking for. So it's just Rebel News saying this, that they were disqualified. That's what I mean, right? It's just the Rebel News article. They put a video about it, but Liberal votes that didn't vote in Liberal leadership race. Yeah, but then you're just going into like conspiracy land, right? Like I kind of want to like kind of rein it in a bit and be like, hey, like why are we believing what we believe? Why are we saying these things, right? That's kind of where I want to do more of, instead of just like going off about it. Because even the more you realize, the more you have to prove what you're talking about and what you believe, the more rooted you become in it, and the more you realize it might not be what you thought it was. Yeah, it seems like, and even on the official Wikipedia page, do they have anything about disqualifications? Disqualified by the party, just Ruby Dahlia, and then the other ones withdrew, failed to qualify, or Chandra, and then the rest were declined, or I guess decided not to run. I don't know which it was. Disqualified, just talking about disqualifications. Any disqualified votes it's talking about here? Yeah, so far all I can find is like nobody will know if the vote was counted or not on the system they use. The mail-in system used by the CPC is much superior. You can actually find out if your vote was received. Oh, that's cool. It doesn't make sense to register by January 30th and not vote. Yeah, but I think there was a lot of people who were going to, maybe were voting for these other candidates, right? Maybe like I am saying, you can't rule out, maybe a lot of them wanted to support Ruby Dahlia. Like you can't say that. Like that's something I'm saying, because she was disqualified, I believe, after all those voters registered, right? So I don't know. I just think we got to like rein it in a little bit, not just jump on this whatever like anger train we see on X. Because I feel like I've done it in the past too, where you see a headline, you're just like, holy crap, that's actually happening. And you like get swept away by it. And then you realize, oh, it's not nearly what you thought it was, right? Happens to me all the time. And that's why I'm like wanting to dive into this with you guys right now, instead of just spouting off. Like, let's look into it. Let's look into the Liberal leadership election. Yeah. So yeah, we're just, Saul's just joining now.
1 second.
Hey James, how's it going, buddy?
Okay.
Hey, so yeah, we're just going over liberal leadership election. Basically, it's not anyone specifically in this chat, just overall on X Spaces, like in the last few days on social media, I've seen a lot of this where people are saying, and the Rebel News did a video this morning saying that 2/3 of the liberal voters were disqualified. But when looking into it, I can't find anything on disqualifying the votes, as all I can find is that that amount of people didn't vote. And that was in my
that's what I saw too.
Pre-stream research as well. That's what I found. I'm trying to go over it a little bit right now. So the problem is when you just go on your phone and end up looking up, so I didn't bookmark anything like an idiot. So we're going over it now. So I'm just pulling up some random articles from, I guess, the last couple of days here. I'm trying to find anything that says that many voters were disqualified. And like, they're saying apparently only 188 people voted for Freeland in our own riding. But like,
there was a problem with people not being able to log in, because I know I had a little bit of issue logging into the thing. Still listening though.
Yeah, there's the people don't know there's a petition going around for audit Mark Carney apparently. Who signed? Are they even real people? Yeah, I don't see any like sources listed as to. I think they're just the ones making these suspicious, which is fine. Like you have the right to do that and start a petition about it. Like that's good for that. Good on them for doing that. Like they're exercising their their rights in a democracy, right? I have a lot of respect for that. But in terms of like, is that really what happened? I don't know. Yeah, I think it's going to be any week now. They just don't want to, It's probably going to be after this prorogation ends. They're probably.
What I'm nervous for is when Carney's going to have to figure out how, because all these politicians talk this way for a reason. It's because they don't ever want to be quoted saying something that they're going to have to go back on later. Like they're trying really hard not to like make any actual firm stances on anything because they don't want to get quoted on it later, right? And Carney, that's what he just says stuff sometimes, and it's like, okay, you probably should have worded that.
He's not used to this age. I said it. He's behind the times. He's not used to being recorded and everything he says. That's why he's flipping and flopping. I don't think you're used French. Like
I think the other thing too is that it's like it's a difficult thing. People don't realize what it's like to have a camera on you all the time as a politician, and every single thing you say is being like checked, cross-checked to see if you're keeping a consistent stance the whole time. And like you might literally have something where you said something, you changed your mind, next stance, you had a little bit of a different position, and now it looks like you're just lying to the crowd, right? But unless you state that, you say, hey, last week I made this statement, and now I've realized like I wouldn't want to ever impose on Quebec sovereignty or whatever, and I would never force a pipeline through here. It would always be something that I would need province's support for.
It sounds like Quebec wants it. Is what it sounds like. It seems like. It sounds like Quebec.
I think at this point, people are gonna bend on a lot of stuff right now because everybody's worried about the tariff thing.
Well, yeah, it's like we don't have the option anymore of just doing how we.
It's an unstable relationship now, right? We don't know what's going to happen. Even if things do get fixed, it could flip and flop at any moment. We don't know if Trump's going to wake up tomorrow and decide he wants to take Ottawa or like what's going to happen. Like we have no idea, right? And that sounds crazy, and I hope that that's absolutely never going to happen. I'm just saying, like we're really living in a world right now where it wouldn't be that surprising, like we're like it's crazy. Everything happening is just nuts.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Well, not nuts, but it's unprecedented, at least, or unprecedented. Yeah. So it's like, it makes people think, oh, what else is possible if this is possible, right? And I think we're already seeing kind of with the way Trudeau prorogated and everything, I think was a huge FU to the people. I think it was horrible timing. And luckily, it sounds like the one person who did win this Liberal leadership race is probably going to is calling an election right away. Because
they were saying that on the CBC thing, right?
Well, yeah, because it makes sense. Because just off his cabinet picks too. I'm like, oh, I realized after they said it, it's like he's getting like a wartime cabinet, and he's picking unelected officials because he's going to drive it right into an election right away. And I'm like, they're right. That's what he's doing. And yeah, it's even be flaunting names like Christy Clark or the former MP. Like he's trying to get his A team together, right? And then he's going to call an election, which I think is smart.
What's Christy Clark doing? Is she in his cabinet?
I have no idea. Apparently, she's rumored he was talking to her. I don't know what they were saying on CBC. I don't know exactly.
She might be running.
Over it. Yeah, I don't
know. It could be a mistake to put her in the cabinet.
Christy Clark,
because she dropped her the race over something. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, she's caught lying. You know what I mean? It's just like you can't be doing that
You
that
want to
stuff
talk about
annoying.
somebody who's actually not used to this age? Like she's somebody who's used to being able to just kind of like lie on the media and not have anybody cross-checking you
Yeah, I
constantly.
feel like
right?
it wasn't until like the last 10 years things changed a lot. So I feel like if you were in politics before then, you're probably not even going to recognize the landscape anymore.
It's probably a lot scarier to be a politician now. I feel like you can get quoted out of like, and you have so many more eyes on you, right? So many people that would never be able to see who you were. You would be invisible to them, and now all these eyes are on you. You can read the whole. Scroll up a little bit because it's like a response to another thread. I don't know.
Okay, I just posted. I just did the exact. I have it in a separate browser, so it doesn't like dox me in any way. Or
yeah, here.
So I just have it set up so it's like controlled.
Here, I'll do the whole thing because now I'm realizing it actually doesn't really work on its own as well. But he's just saying that they're good rivals for each other, right? They kind of play against each other's weaknesses really well. Like I think they'll make each other better politicians.
Yeah, they
on both
seem
ends.
like what you'd think conservative versus liberal would be. I think more of than what it was with Trudeau.
Yeah, ideally.
What it was with Trudeau was just way different. I feel like.
Yeah. I honestly think that Poilievre too has moderated a bit since he first started. And I mean, there's a reason that a lot of people are upset with him about stuff like that. But I think that it's good. It shows that he's planning on running for the whole country. He wants to be a prime minister for people who voted liberal in the past, right? He wants to be a prime minister for everybody, not just for the people who are his diehard supporters.
Yeah, I just don't think it's like, I don't know. I think in this situation too, it's hard to refer to the past as an example and say whatever comes next is just going to be a repeat. I think whatever next term looks like, it's not going to be a repeat of what's been done before. I think everyone's on the same page, even Carney, that there needs to be a new approach. And it sounds like that's what he's doing, building his A-team, building a wartime cabinet, as CBC put it, right? Like, I think that's a sign of like, he understands this is going to be a big challenge. And I think that alone is a big deal. And I think people need to realize, like, I don't know. I just don't think it's the end of our country or democracy if he wins. If you want to leave,
yeah, no, it's the same with me.
Yeah, like,
I think
I'm not going anywhere.
I'm confident. I have to be confident in either one. I'm more confident in one, but I have to believe that Poilievre will make do with it because I think he's wanted to export to other countries for a long time. So hopefully he's got like a plan.
He's literally been saying this about our oil specifically for a long time.
That's what I was saying, right? Yeah, it's
just energy.
Carney's appealing to people by basically saying he wants to do a lot of the stuff that the conservatives been whining about.
The main
for the last 10
topics
years,
went from
right?
like gender equality and taking away your guns in the name of women's rights
to resource
now
extraction in the economy.
About, exactly.
Thank
reasonable
God.
things.
Jeez,
now.
I know. Thank you. Yeah.
Like,
and I mean, I don't think it's always one. I would say that a lot of the time, and I don't think it's necessarily Poilievre. I feel like he's honestly stayed away from the issue, but conservative media does tend to focus on these culture issues, and I think that stuff like this is just so much more interesting to me because it has way more to do with what everybody's going through. It has way bigger effect on your life.
Yeah, and
like
I'm starting to
gender
realize
stuff.
too,
You can think it's cringe, but it's like such a small part of the population.
It takes
and
me more
locally,
mental capacity to listen to Carney than to Trudeau, because Trudeau, when you lose him, you're just like, okay, he's just saying nonsense. That's why you're losing him. But with Carney, he's saying some big words, and like, okay, I got to redigest that. What is he saying? And I feel like that's like, you know, super important, right? Is that we just need to be able to find out exactly. And I think if you haven't read Mark Carney's book, you know, I suggest you do it. Hurricane, one of our members, thinks that he still thinks he's a Marxist after reading the whole book, and I respect that, because it's like at the end of the day, at least you read the whole book, right? You're putting, you know, and people like Hurricane are putting efforts in to figure out what's going on, right? And I think that's what we need
and
to
actually
all be
like
doing. And I think everyone in the stream does, right? I just think as a general broad
that's the environment
statement,
we're trying to foster here too, right? Is that if you're going to say things, that's like just support your claims with evidence, and then everybody can kind of see why you believe things. And like there's a reason that me and Justice, we have different beliefs on some stuff, but like we can have these conversations because we're agreeing on a lot of the base facts, or at least like, oh, that's enough to make you believe that this is true. That's not quite what I need to see. And like, but I'll say where the evidence needs to be for me to believe something, and Justice will do the same most of the time, right? Like I get from anytime, I can't think of him not doing that in the past. Right?
This is what I'm talking about when I say Carney does seem like he's in the Ottawa bubble a little bit, you know, calling the opioid crisis a challenge, not a crisis. You know, this kind of language, people don't want to hear that, right? People don't want to hear them downplay you don't want to hear him downplay your
I think that's I think that's a really good example of something where he just isn't used to being a politician and having his speech examined in that kind of way.
But I think that's where the disconnect
in a
kinda comes
personal,
in. Like, when has Carney lived as a normal dude? You know, and I think it's been a long time if he ever did.
Right?
Yeah,
he's having these conversations about the
even
public
when he did,
with
he had
other
multiple
elites.
siblings and played hockey. It's like, I had multiple siblings. Our parents couldn't afford to put us in hockey. We barely afford football.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
His parents were teachers, to be fair. And I mean, did Polyev play hockey too? No, he was a debate guy. I think he did when he was little. I think he stopped when he was 14.
Nerd. I think he was just a huge nerd.
Yeah, he was. He was
a super tiny guy in high school that nobody really liked. Like, I guarantee he probably grew up like that. But like, who he is now, I don't think defines who he was. And I think it's the same for Carney as well. And I think, you know, every man's got different versions of himself, right? They got the man they want to be and the man they really are. And I think it's a matter of if that man they really are overrides the man they want to be. That's where you end up with somebody like Trudeau.
Yeah, based. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
At the same time, I think a lot of that has to do with Christy, who was damage control for Trudeau all the time, right? It was Christy Freeland. Like in every situation, I know, but in every, I know, ignore Vash's face for a sec, okay? I'm trying to say, in every situation when there was some kind of scandal or disaster since 2021 forward, it's been Karina Gould and Christy Freeland at the helm of the, well, he didn't know, you know, the whole damage control response, right? So I feel like they have Trudeau all over them. And I think that's why they lost the way they did, is that Mark Carney was able to have no Trudeau on him, so to speak. And then you got Crunchy to endorse him. Like, of all liberals to endorse him, or former liberals to endorse him, he's got some very strategic A-team members he's picked out that he's seemed to focus on, right? Like Crunchy coming out the way he did, I think was pretty big. I don't know if you have anything else you want to say. It's all before I push play.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, I think, and also the other thing too, as I was looking at, is that it's ranked choice, I think, for the leadership race. So that might have had something to do with it too. So you could have had some people who maybe their first choice was Krista, and then their second choice was Carney. And the way that it goes, I don't know how it works with like the 86%.
Because they had a ranked choice system. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh, look at this, guys. Look at this. This is why I hate Max. I dislike. Like, look at 6% of the vote is going to the Green Party and PPC. I just feel like those are so far off what most people, I don't know. Anyways, that's the point. I'm not going to pick on them, but 15 for the NDP, 35 for the Liberal, 36 for the Cons, or for the Conservative, and 8 for the Bloc. So looks like I said, it's kind of anyone's game at this point. That's what I was saying earlier. It's the polls were kind of giving that impression. This video is from 1 hour ago, posted by CTV News, sourcing the Nanos polling data for this. The Liberals 1 point behind the Conservatives. So, yeah, Nanos polling. Yeah, Great Dominion. I know there's going to be, I can't remember there's another one I usually liked. I forget what they're called. Abacus. That's one I find they're a bit better. Or Abacus or Abacus, I forget what they're called, but they have some different strategy. Their CEO he's a pretty young dude. He's not much older than me and Saul. And he was on a video and he was explaining how they have a different strategy of collecting data. And I can't remember exactly what his name was, but yeah, I'm curious to see what they have to say.
Doug Ford and Lutnick issued a joint statement saying today, United States Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, did I read this already? Agreed to officially meet with Premier Ford in Washington on Thursday, March 13th, alongside the United States Trade Representative to discuss a renewed USMCA ahead of the April 2nd reciprocal tariff deadline. In response, Ontario agreed to suspend its 25% surcharge on exports of electricity to Michigan, New York, and Minnesota. I posted that in the Discord.
You didn't read that. Yeah, don't post in the Discord, please. Yeah. Abacus is way more correct. They have some different strategy. I can't remember, he explained it before. And I thought, because they use like social media a little bit more for their polling. And I think all these other companies aren't doing that. So they're kind of cutting out a huge portion, I think, of certain demographics. So that's pretty much the last thing I wanted to go over. I'm out of time today, pretty much. I'm going to have to cut it. But yeah, no, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks to those who like the stream, by the way, helps us out a lot. If you're a subscriber to us, if you're liking all our videos and shorts and streams, helps us grow, helps us with the juicy algorithm and getting our content recommended to other people. So yeah, if you want to help us grow, just dropping a like on stuff we post. If you genuinely like it, I'm not gonna, you
don't give us false confidence.
Yeah. Don't just pump my tires for no reason here, guys. Trudeau arguably looks more credible now than he ever has looked his entire 10 years as PM. That's why I say the Liberals may soon regret dumping him. Yeah, I'm curious. I don't know what's going to happen in this political landscape. Seems like it's anyone's game. Seems like we could end up with a conservative or liberal minority government, I guess, or I guess would it be a majority technically? I don't know. With the number, the NDP actually went up quite a bit in the polls. I saw polls that they were posting of like 8 for the NDP. So to see,
I don't think anything's settled yet. I think they're
15%.
going to be all over the place until we start to get like debates and have these guys kind of test it a little more.
True. And yeah, we'll also keep an eye on poly market and stuff too. I think that's kind of a neat little thing to look at for poll. Honestly, that's kind of a poll in my mind because that's just like where people think, like if people are placing their bets, that's kind of what the poll is.
Are you talking about poly market?
Dude, there's a poly market on who's Canada's next prime minister.